Hello, and welcome all to another episode of Madhu Decodes, the podcast where we try to decode complex minds and technologies and job titles that's shaping our future in the world of AI. I am Madhu Satyaselan, your host today. Our guest here is S. Anand. Officially, he's the head of innovation at Straive and a co-founder of massively successful data storytelling company, Gramener. He has been named one of the India's top 10 data scientists. He's a regular on TEDx and Pycon stages. His background spans from IIT Madras to IIM Bangalore. But
Thanks, Madhu. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Anand. I think we have to straight go to the point. So the moment I saw your profile, the moment I know you're an LLM psychologist, I was really intrigued. So I think that's where my head is at to start decoding the LLM psychologist terminology itself. And I know through my research that this is a terminology that you have, chosen to, from your HR as well, you have chosen to name yourself as one. So when we hear psychologist, we think of human minds, therapies, talking about biases, behavior, etc. So it is a fascinating concept for me to think about LLM having a psychology of its own. And I think since I've started reading, I've started looking at some of your podcast and your work, I keep thinking about all of those aspects. My first question is, why that specific word? Are you actually putting ChatGPT in a couch and doing some therapy, or what do you do? Why is that terminology important and why did you choose it?
I look at how LLMs respond to inputs, and they have very varied personalities. So if we literally take a personality test like the 5 traits test, popularly called OCEAN, where we evaluate LLMs on openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. By default, they exhibit different personalities. Now, models are trained to respond based on a personality that we can ascribe to them. So it's not like models have only a fixed personality, but without asking them to take on any role. If we give them the standard psychological test that we give humans, then for example, OpenAI tends to be very high on its openness to experience. Many of the OpenAI models, GPT-4o being a classic example when I ran it last year, and also on agreeableness. So in a sense, it's kind of like if I take openness to experience as a spectrum from, let's say, people like Warren Buffett or Henry Ford or George W. Bush, who are conservative, practical, fairly rigid in their respective ways, to people like Einstein, Rabindranath Tagore, M.F. Hussain, who are curious, open, and innovative. OpenAI among the models is probably a lot more on the latter side than any other model. In contrast, let's say a model like Gemini Flash is a very introverted model. If you take famous personalities like A.R. Rahman or J.K. Rowling or Rahul Dravid, these are very reserved, quiet personalities. In contrast with, say, Shah Rukh Khan, Richard Branson, Ranveer Singh, very sociable, talkative, energetic. Gemini Flash is Gemini 2.0 Flash in particular is very much on the former end. So part of what I do is trying to figure out how models behave, and psychological tests are not necessarily the best ways of analyzing LLMs, but my intent is to observe and extract this kind of information from them, and hence the term LLM psychologist.
Interesting. So let's clarify who the patient is or who the subject matter expert is, right? So when we say patient, are you studying LLM? Are you studying how they hallucinate, how they bias, how the world model is emergent? And are you studying a human user or who is being psychologically manipulated, who's using the LLM, or delighted by AI responses, or you're studying the LLM's mindset?
Very much the LLM's mindset, not the humans.
Okay, so what do you do then? When you study the LLM's mindset, you kind of understand the personalities of those LLMs by way of your experiments, I suppose. So can you talk to us a little bit of your journey towards finding the LLM's mindset? What are the steps you do, or what are the actions you take to study them basically, and how often do you do that?
It's probably useful to think of LLMs more as people than as machines. And in that sense, when we look at, let's say, an employee, there are some basic questions that we ask. how much will they cost? How well will they perform their job? How fast are they? What is their background? Will they have a cultural fit? And so on. And in a sense, that's how I look at LLMs as well. One of the things that I track on a regular basis is against a set of benchmarks. How well do they perform? It's roughly the equivalent of giving an exam to an LLM. And what we're finding is that for a given cost, the quality of models has steadily improved. To give you an example, let's say if we move back in time to 2 years ago, November 2023, that was when GPT-4 was released. At that time, it had the level of intelligence of, and I'm going to use chess ELO score ratings as an example. Let's say an ELO score of, today an ELO score of 2400 would be a grandmaster level, but an ELO score of around 1200 would be maybe a local chess champion level. We already had models at a 1200 level with, let's say, Qwen 1.5 in October 2023. But in November 2023, there was a huge leap with the ELO score jumping all the way up to 100 points of intelligence. Another way, it's roughly like earlier we had 8th grade level students among the model ecosystem. Now suddenly we have almost 12th grade level intelligence coming out, and at significantly higher cost. So Qwen cost about 27 cents per million tokens. A way to think about it is, if you gave it the entire, let's say, Harry Potter books, all 7, and asked it to process it and answer any question based on it, for it to read through the whole thing and answer almost any question would cost about 27 cents. In contrast, GPT-4 would have cost $10. Now that's almost 40 times higher. Huge difference. But over time, that cost has dramatically fallen. So for instance, OpenAI themselves in July 24, just 8 months later, released the GPT-4o mini model. Roughly same level of intelligence, but cost-wise, 15 cents, that is 1/60th of the cost. Now imagine, in November 23, a high school student comes in and says, I will charge you $10 per million tokens. 7 months later, a student walks in and says, I'm going to charge 1/60th, meaning you can hire 60 such students to do exactly the same thing. That's huge, and it's gone on. So today, for instance, as of November 23, you can take a better model, almost a second year college graduate level intelligence with a model like GPT-5 Nano, and that would cost 5 cents, 1/3 of what even that student would have cost, now graduate. And we have even higher intelligences. You could say that like Gemini 2.5 Pro or GPT-5 is about as smart as a postgraduate and is coming at a cost of about $1 to $2 per million tokens, and that's also reasonably inexpensive. So part of what I do is research the economic value of different models and how they evolve over time, apart from their personality.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you. That is a good insight. So you understand the LLM's capabilities by way of giving them certain tests. You evaluate how well they perform for what cost, and then you give a score to evaluate the effectiveness of a particular LLM, right? So that is what you essentially do as a LLM psychologist. Yeah, I think I am a little bit more intrigued into your pathway, right? What decision point made you pivot? Because you did engineering in IIT Madras, and then you did MBA in IIM Bangalore. You worked in Boston Consulting Group. You did a lot of projects, but you did your own startup as well as a storyteller and a data expert in Gramener. And what was this aha moment that said, okay, this is my pathway. when AI came in, or even before AI came in, I think you were in the direction of thinking about LLMs and doing a lot of data related analytics work that were anyway leading you to this journey. But when did you actually have the aha moment, and what was the pivot?
ChatGPT was released in November 22, and even before that the GPT class of models had been released. So I had tried these in the past. For example, I was trying to see if the GPT model could actually generate the configuration for some of the comic strips that we were playing around with, and it turned out that it had some moderate success, but it didn't feel very impressive. When ChatGPT was out, tried it once, maybe twice, and I didn't really understand what the big deal was. And this is how most opportunities get missed. There was a client presentation where they were looking to understand what the impact of AI was. I was forced to go back and try it out. I explored ChatGPT. 29th May 2023, I put in a question to ChatGPT, which was, how can I visualize the change in sales since last month? I'm in the data visualization space. I know this in and out. So when I, as an expert, looked at its answer, which was said to visualize the change in sales since last month, you can use various types of charts. Here are some popular options. It said line chart, you would use it. Here's how you would draw it. Here's when you would use it, a bar chart, an area chart, a pie chart, a column chart. And mention when you would use which. Each of these would be drawn. Or tools you could use. It would suggest Excel, Google Sheets, Tableau, Python libraries, Matplotlib, Plotly. At that point, I said, okay, at least for a basic question like this, it has the ability to give the same answer as me, who is an expert in the field. That's not bad. And then, a week later, 8th June 23, I asked it, here's a survey that I did of common problems that software developers have. Summarize the 5 most common problems. And it did, which was fantastic. Then I said, okay, I get it. So now against these 5 buckets, communication, resources, timelines, work-life balance, process, I want you to categorize each of the original problems against that. And it did. Then I said, now tell me, which of these should I focus on to have the highest improvement on a software company's productivity? And went through, thought through step by step in detail and said, focus on the communications related problems, because that's what seems to be mentioned more often, seems to have a higher impact because of these reasons. Now, given the volume of input, this is something that would have taken me at least a few hours. So definitely a time-saving tool. But what impressed me was in the middle stage where it did that categorization. I'm not sure I could have come up with a categorization that was as good. So here is something where it actually has higher intelligence than me. And that's where it struck me. We are talking about an all-round intelligence. Something that may not be as good as an expert in a specific area, but is reasonably good in almost all areas. So where I have deep knowledge, sure, I'll give an answer. But almost anywhere where I don't have that deep knowledge, here is a tool that I can use to answer my questions, which means that my need for average people supporting me has suddenly vanished. And that is a huge discovery. At that point, I became a total convert.
Okay. So ChatGPT did the magic for you. So how did you start learning other LLMs? What intrigued you apart from ChatGPT?
Partly to see what else is out there. Partly to fill in some of the gaps that I had. Every model has its pros and cons. Every tool or application has its pros and cons. So I was exploring. Price and cost are certainly a constraint. When the Gemini models came out, they were practically free for fairly high compute capacity. GPT-4, for instance, was not available for free unless you were using Microsoft Copilot, whereas Gemini 1.5 Pro was available for free for a fairly large usage limit. So I said, okay, that gives me higher intelligence in a more accessible way, but also allowed me to explore some of the things that, let's say, so Gemini models, for instance, allowed me to process images, which ChatGPT in the initial stages did not do as well. So depending on my need and the lack of a tool's ability to solve my needs, I started looking out and found others.
Thank you. See, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the journey so that my listeners who want to become, say, LLM psychologists or who want to venture into this type of work need to understand what they need to invest, right? So I'd like to understand, you are a technologist, hardcore technologist. You were deep into these concepts already before you ventured into your experiments on LLMs. But say from 2023 to 2025, you would have done a lot of homework to keep going, to keep experimenting and things like that. So I would like to talk about that part of your exercise, what kind of homework you normally do to keep up with your information about LLMs. And not only that, I would also like to touch upon, is it important to be a technologist to start investing time and energy in a concept like this? So those two, I would like to hear from you, please.
I think a lot of the strength that we derive is from strengths we already have. So I am a technologist and therefore chose a technology route. But someone who is a legal expert would probably be able to get more legal assistance out of an LLM than anyone else would. And by doubling down on their strengths, they are extracting the best out of that too. Remember, I mentioned that AI is almost like an all-rounder. But when it gives an answer, I am able to shape its answer much better in my area of expertise, therefore get more out of it. In an area outside of my expertise, I'm just relying on its wisdom. So if we want to get the most out of a tool, it certainly helps to take assistance where we are not experts in that area. But it makes sense to improve our expertise by prompting repeatedly where we know it well. And from that perspective, I would say two things. One, the area of expertise doesn't matter. You leverage your expertise. You don't have to be a technologist to leverage LLMs. Second, practice is really all that counts. I had a target of having 50 conversations with ChatGPT or any LLM every day.
Okay.
We're still far from it, but having a target and getting as close to it as I could definitely help. And doing this like any other form of study in a systematic, intentional way. So for instance, I was experimenting with, I saw a blog post that if you tell ChatGPT or any Gemini or Claude or any of these models, something like, oh dear, I'm totally overwhelmed, I need your help this second, my life depends on it, I'm counting on you. That sort of emotional blackmail. It does a better job. Is that true? I said, let's take this prompt with and without this prompt. If I ask LLMs to multiply a bunch of numbers, do they get it right more often? Do they get it wrong more often? And it turns out that, of course, the answer varies, but on average, emotional blackmail makes models perform worse. Roughly, and I tested this across about 28 models. For 7 models, it performs better. For 21 models, it performs worse.
Wow.
So that's not a good sign.
That's not a true statement.
On the other hand, exactly. Or, well, it is for those 7 models, not for...
Those 7 ones, yeah.
Yeah, not for the majority or the average model. In contrast, a statement like, think step by step. Now, that actually tends to improve most models and by a reasonable amount. So, and that of course also led to the emergence of most LLM players, including that kind of a prompt in the models themselves. So, simple things like if somebody says something, let us try it out, let us see if it works, if it doesn't work. That's an example of intentional practice and it helps.
Okay, so you do these intentional practices or questioning time and again on different concepts. You get an inspiration from internet, you get inspiration from news and your own curious mindset. And that's how you venture into the journey of finding out what an LLM behavior is looking like. So do you then create a LLM psychology report, or do you maintain a diary or a log of LLM's psychological journey?
I do that at 3 levels. 1, anything that I find interesting, I note in a things I learned log and publish it. For larger experiments, I create data stories out of those and publish them. And for where I'm trying out a functionality, I build a model, a prototype, a mini application of sorts and publish that as well. All of these are on my GitHub repository.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a very good pivot into the why, the value of AI therapy or value of an LLM psychologist's work. So let's talk about the benefits. Because this isn't an academic exercise for companies, the CXOs, the developers are listening. What are the tangible business benefit of having an LLM psychologist in a payroll?
If clients have questions, objections, confusions about LLMs, and being able to help them understand in a systematic way how a problem can be addressed or bypassed is where somebody like me comes in. For example, one of the classic objections to using LLMs is, oh, but they hallucinate. That is, they can make mistakes. How do we address that? Now, the truth is, humans hallucinate as well, meaning they make mistakes. How do we deal with it? And that's easy. That's standard management practice. We have someone else verify their work. So I ran an experiment to see. Supposing we asked an LLM to classify chat messages into a bunch of categories. How often do they get it right on average? And it turns out that for the data set that I was looking at, 14% of the time they make mistakes. What if we had two models cross-check and only if they both agree do we take the result? It improves the error rate, brings it down to 3.7%. That is effective. Now we can do triple checking, quadruple checking, quintuple checking. And it turns out that the error rates fall. 2.2%, 1.5%, 0.7%. So we can take it to 99.3% accuracy. The remaining, where even one model disagrees with any of the others, we can have a manual check. But even then, that amount of work of manual checking is only 28% of the total work. So which means that 100% of the work has reduced by 72% to just 28% of the manual work. And overall, I have an accuracy of 99.3%. Now, the models are so cheap that quintuple checking is barely any incremental cost to single check. And therefore, people say, okay, I get it. I now have a lever to control quality, trading it off against the effort. So I can decide I want double checking or triple checking or quadruple checking. And then which models should you use to improve the effectiveness? Some models tend to think differently. So you would want to pair those. Which are those models? These are the kinds of things where if someone's constantly experimenting, researching and sharing with the organization, they have an advantage in being able to share with clients and help them move forward in their AI journey, and therefore leading to a commercial benefit as well.
Thank you. That's very insightful. And I think the AI entrepreneurs who are venturing into AI agents or the building agents or building workflows, I think for them, this is a good insight to have, right? To have such a resource where somebody has already experimented. They have given the pros and cons of certain LLMs on all the aspects that you've just specified. And things like hallucinating, what does it mean, how each one behaves in a hallucinating world, and what is the percentage of error they need to compute manually. So that I think is a very good insight for somebody who's building an AI-based solution. So do you also have any recommendations for, or a treatment, let's say, for a hallucination as a problem statement? Do you think there is something like that?
Hallucinations are firstly a feature, not necessarily a bug in every situation. There are times when we want a creative response. If we are generating an image, then we want more creativity. If we are writing a story, we want more creativity. Therefore, if we specifically restrict ourselves to that segment where we want more accuracy, not more creativity, that's how I would differentiate between these. Then, what are some of the things that we can do? One, at a model level, we can prompt better, by which I mean, if the prompt has minor contradictions or confusions, then there is a higher chance for the model to stray in a different direction from what we want. If at the beginning of the prompt, I said, I want you to give me exactly one example, and then we write somewhere here in the middle, here's an example of what you should say. Let's take an example. If I say, I want you to give me precisely one number, and in the examples, we say 22,37.6 as a latitude longitude. Now in our mind, maybe one number means one latitude longitude, but it sees two numbers and it gets confused. Should I give only one number or should I give two numbers?
Okay.
That's an example of a confusion. And there can literally be a contradiction. I wrote one instruction last week. Now I'm writing another instruction this week. Last week's instruction was near the top. I didn't read it. This week's instruction is near the bottom, and the two are conflicting. But even this apart, if we said, give me a short sentence. Now, how short is short? 1 word? 10 words? 30 words?
We don't
know, Giving an example might help. Giving a number might help. So prompting
Okay.
better is definitely one. Choice of model makes a difference. Older models tend to be less capable than newer models. Even among the newer models, there are nuances. So for example, the GPT-5 class of models follow instructions very, very faithfully, almost too literally, whereas the Claude models follow instructions more intuitively. So depending on the situation, if you want absolutely do exactly what I say and I am saying it correctly, then you would want to go for the GPT-5 models. If on the other hand, you say do the right thing and I may not be saying it perfectly, but follow that sort of a thing, then you may want to go for the Anthropic type of model. So model choice is a second solution. A third solution is engineering systems. After you give an answer, have another model maybe cross-check it and find all the errors and share a correction. That's a way of approaching it. Or beforehand, have another model interpret the question, knowing that people ask vague questions, and rewrite the question in a sharper way and then send it to the model. That's a possibility. That's called prompt rewriting. So these are all examples of engineering solutions to the problem. Prompt optimization, model selection, and engineering. I'm sure there are other variations as well.
There
We
are
can
other variations, yeah.
reduce hallucinations.
Okay, thank you. So you've given the answers for therapies, basically. So you've said prompt therapy and maybe the choice of model as a therapy. And then, of course, reevaluating our
Pretty much.
engineering architecture elements, right, as another therapy. So very interesting take, very, very interesting take. And I think it's a necessity of the new world we are stepping into. So do you think this is going to be a frontier for AI safety and security as well? Because that is a big question. When we talk to business owners, I think people have the question back of their heads. Yes, some of the early adopters are enthusiastic to adopt AI in their business. But the big question everybody asks is how safe is their data? How much will they need to rely on AI safety and security, the systems that exist today? So will this LLM psychology experimental position give answers to AI safety as well?
Thoughts to AI safety at the moment. One is a hard, guaranteed kind of safety, and another is a softer, try and make sure there are fewer problems kind of safety. For, let's say, an internal application, the latter is sufficient. Give me more capability, but if the system is unsafe, it means that data leaks from one part of the organization to the other part of the organization. It's not a disaster. If, for instance, one of my colleagues gets my email ID, it's okay. If, on the other hand, it were an external facing application, if spam gets hold of my email ID, that is not an acceptable. For solving the hard problem, there is what is called the lethal trifecta, which is a term that Simon Willison coined. So there are three things: access to private data, ability to communicate externally, and exposure to untrusted content. If you have all three, your system is unsafe. You can choose any two out of these. Say, look, I won't give you my private data, but I'm okay to expose to untrusted content, read whatever I want. And I'm okay to communicate external, send whatever I want. No problem. My private data does not even come into the picture. Or you could say, I will give you access to private data and you can even communicate with the rest of the world. But the only thing that you can read is trusted content. I will not allow a hacker to write something that goes into your prompt. So in short, it is possible to engineer systems that can access private data, talk to anything and read anything as long as you pick only two of these. But for full capability, you want to be able to access private data and talk anywhere and read anything. All three are required for a good capable system. In that case, we have to mitigate it as much as we can, recognizing that we cannot fully solve the safety problem. Managing prompts, different degrees of permissions for access to private data, try and make sure that the sources are as cleaned up as possible. These are measures that people are trying to take.
Yeah, so I think in an essence, when I look at it holistically, the work that you're doing in finding out the mindset and the behavioral context and everything about LLMs tied to the vulnerabilities or the options that we have for AI safety, we could probably create a safety manual or a safety guideline document that then people can use based on some of the pros and cons of each of those LLMs. Would you agree to that statement?
I wonder if people are able to follow even a simple manual reliably enough. My guess is if we want good safety, it may be more robust to bake it into the tools themselves that prevent harm. You could tell people to drive safely, or you could pass a regulation saying you have to have airbags, you have to have
Speed
fuel
limits.
emission checks, which may not be a safety related thing. Exactly. And I think that those kinds of baked in solutions may have higher benefit, which of course does not mean that we cannot or should not provide a safety manual. But I think that's the layer on top.
What? Okay. I think, yes, you're right. Medications are really important. So does the AI, the safety mechanisms that we build within our own project and tech landscape in the tech architecture. The safety manual that we are giving is an add-on. Exactly like you said, right? It's a nice to have, but not the main crux of the AI safety world. So nicely explained. Thank you, Anand. Thank you. And I think we are coming to what we call a rapid fire round. I wanted to understand, with some of your work you've done over the 2 years, to May 2023 to December 2025, there are so many experiments you have done, and maybe we should make use of those experimental outcomes that you have discovered so far, and we can prescribe perfect AI or LLM that people in different walks of life can use. So I've coined this kind of a rapid fire round. I'm going to throw you names or personalities in different fields, and you can probably prescribe an AI or an LLM that they would be using or that would enhance their work in their current working model. If you could think about that and let me know. Shall I start giving you names? Okay. So for music, let's go with the A.R. Rahman. You mentioned A.R. Rahman earlier. So he is a master of blending complex tradition with cutting-edge technology in the music world. Oscar Award winner. What his AI collaborator tools would look like? What kind of LLM he might use for his sounds?
Might use a tool like AIVA, AIVA, which is specifically built for cinematic orchestration. It's an AI tool with about 200 odd styles, MIDI export. You can identify the composer of specific songs and the legalities associated with it. Though for the common man who's trying to compose music, a tool like Suno might be more apt.
I've used
it. Can.
Yeah, okay. Creates a match. I think Suno, even Lehman Labs, I've used them both for creation of music and everything. Yeah, good. Thank you. So AIVA for A.R. Rahman. There we go. The next one for sports, Serena Williams. She's an athlete on court, but a powerhouse of venture capitalist. So what AI should she use to go for the court and for the boardroom?
For the court, maybe something like Swing Vision, which gives AI-based shot tracking and coaching directly from phone.
Wow, okay.
And for the boardroom, for a VC, maybe something like Alpha Sense, which can accelerate venture research with generative summaries across filings and expert sources. But arguably, even the likes of ChatGPT Pro or Claude's Max, which can do some fantastic deep research, both on the sports side, but even more importantly, across portfolio companies, pitch decks, for example.
Okay, thank you. That's good insights. And I think that's a good insight, not just for Serena, I think also for other AI entrepreneurs who are wanting to venture again into that world. So next one is for philanthropy and literature. Sudha Murthy. She's an engineer, a beloved author, philanthropist, a storyteller as well. I love her storytelling narrative. What AI do you give her to scale her impact and empathy that she's already very good at?
Possibly something like Indictrans 2 or Sarvam AI, which have strong translation capabilities across a wide variety of Indic languages for the stories to reach a wider audience. And something like Notebook LM, where she could take hundreds of thousands of stories and reports across multiple sources, create audio overviews, and have it generate stories for us or story ideas, perhaps.
Thank you, Anand. That's nice. Next one is for global advocacy. Michelle Obama. She runs global initiatives for education and health. Very powerful communicator in the world. What would be her AI prescription?
possibility would be something like quorum grassroots combined with voter voice. This has the ability to generate hundreds of unique message variations, reaching a large number of people in a far more personalized way. Or something like C2PA. These are content credentials. They allow media to counter deepfakes and build public trust. These are some of the tools that you could use in public discourse.
Thank you. Now coming back to sports again, Virat Kohli, a different kind of athlete, yeah. He's obsessed with data, peak performance, computing real-time strategy, right? What would be his personal AI performance coach?
Possibly something like Cricket's Centurion. It's a comprehensive cricket database combined with models that predict the expected number of runs and can guide on match strategy. Something like Stance Beam. That's a tool that quantifies the bat mechanics in practice. Tools like Full Track AI, which can convert your phone into a full-fledged ball tracking application, and also provides biomechanical feedback during net sessions for his self-coaching sessions.
Okay. Something everybody can use as well, right? It's not just for Virat Kohli, for the aspirants in cricket world. Yeah, that's nice. For entertainment and business, Taylor Swift. She's not a musician. She's running a global logistics, marketing, and an economic empire. So what would be an AI that drives her?
It's quite broad. If you look at something like the supply chain side of what she manages, then maybe Blue Yonder as an AI management tool for a large supply chain fleet, or even Salesforce Einstein CRM, which is an AI-driven. Einstein is the AI-driven part of Salesforce. Or you could go for something like Verified Fan, which is a tool that checks on her social media content, which are bots and which are not. Content ID for YouTube, which can check if any of her videos are being copied and enforce rights across YouTube at scale. These are some that come to mind.
Okay, thank you. And I think final one, it's a what if situation, right? Our beloved APJ Abdul Kalam, a scientist, educator, president. What AI would have helped him accelerate his vision for 2020 in India?
I think he would have loved the Khan Academy AI, I'm trying to remember its name, Khanmigo, which allows tutoring through AI across a huge number of students. I think he would have really liked the really good content to have reached students where we do not have good teachers to educate them.
Yeah, so did you say, can you repeat the name for me, please? I think I didn't hear it very well.
Khanmigo from Khan Academy.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, Anand, it has been a mind-blowing conversation. It's not going to stop here. We can keep asking you loads of other questions. We can keep experimenting different concepts in different LLMs. But you've taken time out to introduce the concept of LLM psychology, introduce the concept of how somebody can do a homework and how those homework can actually benefit business owners as well as AI entrepreneurs to choose the right AI tools. So those have been really good insights for us here listening to you. I think many more to come, right? Many more to come. And I'm sure with the evolution of LLM, with the experiments most of us are currently going through, there are going to be numerous other findings and numerous other job titles alongside psychologists that are going to emerge in the system. What would you like to tell our listeners who want to venture into such experiments? Do you have any advice for our listeners?
Practice is probably the biggest lever here. 50 conversations a day with any LLM will take you very far.
Thank you so much. I know you're making a lot of sense for the title. You're giving it a lot more justification. Thank you so much for being here and talking to our audience. Thank you so much, Anand. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Lovely talking to you, Madhu.
Thank you.